Fluttershy let out a soft sigh as she lay on the floor of the examination room. A towel was draped over her head as she breathed slowly, trying to calm herself down and feel better. She had redressed her wounds, her cuts had reopened in the water and were slowly healing again. Her muscles still ached though, the health drinks had helped a lot. Her shivering had gone away as well, a sign her body temperature was returning to normal. She had made a makeshift fire with some of the leftover gauze and bandages, using a small bit of lantern oil to help it burn. The fire had provided her with a gentle comfort, warming her body and calming her mind as the flames danced before her. It wouldn't last for long, but it was serving its purpose. She had hung her bag to help it dry quicker, as well as getting all the water out of the music box. She was surprised she hadn't lost the doll key in the watery mess, so the map of Ponyville hadn't fetched as well. It was drying as well, though it wouldn't ever be quite the same. I wonder what Rainbow Dash and Pinkie Pie are doing right now, Fluttershy asked herself, staring into the flames. She was feeling lonely without her friends, and she was starting to worry about their safety. This place wasn't welcoming. Already she had brushed death twice, and both times she had been saved thanks to Rainbow Dash. Rainbow Dash, she muttered quietly, closing her eyes to think about her mare friend. This is it! This is my chance! Rainbow Dash squealed happily as she held up a poster to Fluttershy. The Wonderbolts will be having an open audition in 3 months! This is the first time they've ever done this! Apparently, they've been so amazed at the talent of upcoming flyers that they want to see and personally invite the best of the best to join them! Rainbow Dash let out another squeal as she was practically dancing for joy. That's wonderful, Rainbow Dash! Fluttershy cheered happily for her. You'll finally be able to make your dreams come true. I know! Oh, I'm going to have to pick up my practice sessions. This is going to have to call for some new tricks too. Tricks no pony has ever thought of. The most death-defying and out-of-this-world tricks any pony has ever seen. Rainbow Dash instantly contemplated anything and everything she could do. You shouldn't forget about using the sonic rainboom either. You're the only pony in all of Equestria who can perform it. They'd let you in for sure after they see that, Fluttershy happily said. Rainbow stopped her musing when Fluttershy said that, lowering a hoof she had raised eagerly to the ground. The sonic rainboom, huh? Rainbow scuffed her hoof against the ground, looking a little anxious. What's the matter? Fluttershy asked, noticing the instant change in behaviour. Well, to be honest, I haven't been able to perform the sonic rainbow since the Best Young Flyers competition. Rainbow Dash seemed to grimace at her mentioning of failing to do a move. Really? Do you not remember how you performed it? It's not that I forgot how I did it. It's just for some reason things get too real as I'm just about to perform it. The ground gets too close, or I start to panic about not controlling my speed, or I think that it might be something to perform only on critical occasions, or... Rainbow Dash's frantic rant was interrupted when Fluttershy's lips found her way to Rainbow's. Rainbow's face lit up in a blush at this. I know you can do it, Rainbow Dash. I believe in you. Fluttershy smiled warmly at her mare friend. Well, I suppose I can always give it another try, Dash said, grinning as she blushed heavily. Then she spread her wings and shot into the sky at mighty speed. Fluttershy smiled and watched her, always loving the way Rainbow flew. Rainbow perched herself high on a cloud, looking over the world. With a quick breath, she sprang up into the air once more, flying around as she began to pick up momentum. Fluttershy watched her fly around, realising Dash was getting a feel for the air first, before Dash dropped high up in the air, almost invisible against the sun. Then she saw the descent. Rainbow was racing straight for the ground at tremendous speed. Fluttershy watched in anticipation as she could see Rainbow begin to form the cone of air around her body. Fluttershy almost held her breath. For a moment, it seemed Rainbow hesitated. Fluttershy could see the change in her flight. She put her hoof to her mouth for hesitation that she might go flying backwards as she has done so many times before. But at the last moment, it seemed like a last ditch of determination fired in her eyes and her body stretched forward and suddenly, boom! A huge explosion ripped through the sky, a circle of colour spreading out as a rainbow shot towards the ground, turning right before it would impact with the ground and rocketing into the sky, spreading a giant rainbow across the sky. Fluttershy cheered, jumping up and down at the amazing sight. Wait a moment, An explosion! Fluttershy's head popped up from where she'd been lying on her hooves. The one that woke me up earlier. That sounded a lot like the sonic beam boom. Now she was worried. What reason could Dash have for doing the sonic rainbow here, unless... Oh no! Was Dash being chased by the dragon again? Fluttershy's heart started pounding. She could be hurt, or trapped, or worse! Her heart lodged into her throat as she stood up quickly, shaking her head, trying to clear her mind as her towel fell to the floor. No, I can't think that way. Rainbow Dash is okay, and I'm sure Pinkie Pie is too. I just have to find them. Fluttershy looked at what remained of the fire before her. It was flickering with its last embers, and it would die out very soon. Okay, I should be dry enough, and my fingers should be dry enough as well. It's time for me to find a way out of here. I have to find my friends. Fluttershy quickly placed her things back into her bag. She made sure to pack some of the extra gauze, bandages, and health drinks as well, making sure she'd have more medical supplies with her should anything happen along the way. This would have to do for now, as she closed it up and placed it back on her back. Then she would turn the lantern around her neck and turned it on, making sure it still worked before walking into the hallway. Instantly, the music box began to hiss and wail with the sound of buzzing bees as the air seemed to become thick. Fluttershy instantly had to struggle for breath, as it felt like the air itself was pressing down hard against her body, trying to strangle the life out of her. Her body felt almost frozen, as the pressure felt like it was trying to crush her body. Her head slowly turned, looking down the hallway from where it felt like the pressure was emanating. Her eyes grew wide and her pupils shrunk, as she could see two piercing red eyes staring back at her. It was a tall pony-like creature, one that easily overpowered her. Its body was covered in darkness that seemed to float and crawl all around it, almost like dancing flames. As it stared at her, its mouth began to open, revealing a white mouth in stark contrast to its black body. Its jagged, sharp teeth bared for her to see. It was grinning at her. It began to walk towards her, each step echoing with a loud thud through the hallway. As it drew closer, the air grew thicker, as its presence seemed to crush her further, the very air pressing down on her, making her legs shake and her breathing stop as her heart pounded heavily in her chest. As it grew closer, a word began to echo through Fluttershy's mind. Pain. The creature would bring her pain. She had to run from it. She had to get away, but her hoofs felt glued in place. Pain, 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 pain. Why couldn't she run? She had to run. She was going to die if she didn't run, but she was paralysed by fear. Fear of what? The wrath of this creature? That's what she had to run away from. I need you to be strong right now, alright? Fluttershy's mind snapped back to reality, instantly turning on her hooves and running as fast as she could. She was finally able to get the air back into her lungs as she quickly ran past the doors around her. The hallway was quickly coming to an end though, and before she could see the staircase on the second floor, she couldn't stop now. She had to run. Her hooves hit heavily against each step as she ran up the stairs. She seemed to be getting farther away from the creature. The air was breathable, and she wasn't feeling the soul-crushing presence. The music box was slowly growing more quiet. She reached the top of the stairs, panting as she took in the stale air. The world still smelled of mildew and rotting materials, but it was better than being in that creature's presence. She quickly began to walk down the hallway of the second floor when her music box suddenly began to hiss again. She stopped in her tracks, expecting the black creature to appear before her, but slowly coming into view of her lantern wasn't the black creature. It looked like a nurse. It was wearing the standard Cloudesdale Hospital nurse uniform, a pink hat with a red cross, and a pink coat that had fit well around the body but ended at the short flank so that cutie mark could be seen. With white stockings on the hind legs, her special made hoof sandals to keep the steps quiet for patients. However, that's where the similarities ended, for the face of the nurse was covered in bandages, hiding its eyes and face, but around its mouth was a metal muzzle with holes for air. But it looked like it had been placed to keep the creature quiet. Its uniform was covered in spots of blood, as if it had attacked something, while its white tail seemed spotless. But most striking of all was a sound around its neck. It wore what looked like a black necklace of living flames, as it had come from the body of the creature from before. Her music began to hiss louder, as the creature grew closer. Her head looked back and forth, looking for a way out that didn't involve going the same way she came. Her eyes fell upon double doors just in front of her to her right. She jumped at the doors and pressed on them, praying they would open. The doors swung open as she ran inside, closing the doors behind her. The hissing of the music box died down as she could tell the creature was nearby outside the door. She hoped it wouldn't come breaking the door down, but she now realised that it just set herself up in a trapped room. She had jumped into what looked like a supplies closet. However, most of the supplies had fallen into this world's rotten despair. Moths flew around the ceiling of the room, as she could smell blood in the air, but couldn't see any. She looked around, seeing there was anything that could possibly hide or keep the creature behind the door away from her. Something glinted against the glare of the lantern on one of the shelves. Huh? She slowly walked over to the light glints. It was an orange gemstone in the shape of an eye. It was the only thing in the entire room that hadn't fallen in the state of rotting. In fact, it looked pristine, as it had been taken care of, whilst everything else fell apart. Something about the gem drew Fluttershy to it, as if it was hypnotising. The jewel itself seemed to be watching her. She gulped down her beating heart and placed the gem carefully in her bag. She'd hold on to it. She felt like it was important. She slowly walked back over to the door and placed her ear against it, trying to hear anything. The hissing of the music box had gone silent, and she didn't hear anything past the door. She opened the door carefully, peeking outside and looking around. The nurse had left. It didn't seem like it had tried to chase after her and break down the door. Fluttershy left a soft sigh out in relief, realising this. She exited the supply closet and continued down the hallway from the direction the nurse had come. She felt very strongly about not returning the way she had just come from. Moving forward was her only option now. Fluttershy looked around carefully at the doors in the hallway. Many had been boarded up with wooden planks nailed to frames, making sure no one could enter or exit the rooms. Many looked like they had just been sealed with some kind of burning material, while others looked like their locks and handles had been broken for ages and wouldn't open. The hallway ended abruptly with a turn. Fluttershy was turning with it to continue down the hall. Something immediately struck her eye as she walked down the hall. She grew closer to it to get a better look at it when she stopped and stared in surprise. On the wall opposite of the doors was a giant mural of Princess Celestia. She was facing the pony, looking at the mural with a hoof, and raised her wings and spread out with an imposing look about her. Above the mural, in large letters, looked like a quote she had once said. "Life is the right of every pony. May we all bask in the light together." Fluttershy blinked at the awe of the mural. She had never seen it before, not in all the years she had been to the hospital at least. Not to mention, something struck her eye as being odd about the mural, as if something was missing. Her eyes were missing. In their place were indentations on the wall, looking as something was supposed to be placed inside of them. Fluttershy carefully pulled the orange stone she had found in the supply closet and carefully fit it into the right eye socket. The stone fit in with a click and stayed in place. Now Celestia was only missing one eye. It was likely that the other eye was somewhere else in the hospital. Suddenly, the note from the front desk made sense to her. They had locked away the other eye somewhere because Celestia's staring was judging them, as though the mirror itself could see something they didn't want it to see. Fluttershy put her hoof to her chin, though. "So I have to find out where they locked the gem away. That's the only hint I have. It's the word hide." Fluttershy looked around in the dark hallway once more, before quickly setting back down the hallway where she was heading. She looked even closer at the doors now, looking for any door that might have some sort of keypad or be open for her, and checked to see if they would reveal some kind of locked item. Even after another turn in the hallway, none of the doors had revealed any answers, before opening up to another staircase, heading back down to the first floor. She treaded carefully, expecting another creature to start heading for her, as she wasn't careful. The world remained quiet, though, as she came upon a hallway that she recognised from when she was a filly. It was a testing white wing of the hospital, one she remembered frequently with her mother as she was getting help. In quiet nostalgia, she began to check some of the doors in the hallway. One door opened for her as she walked inside. "Mother!" came the voice of a little filly. Fluttershy stepped back in shock as she saw what was happening before her. A ghostly version of her mother was lying in the bed in the room, and a filly version of herself ran up happily next to her bedside. "Fluttershy, you came to visit me again," Her mother chuckled happily, leaning in towards to pick up the little filly, hugging her close as she lay in the bed. "Of course, Mother. You know I'll always visit you." Fluttershy chuckled happily as the mother head tickled her. "When are you coming home, Mother? I miss you." "As soon as the doctors finish their testing today," her mother smiled happily. "Really?" The Fluttershy's face lit up happily. "Really?" Her mother chuckled happily at her daughter's enthusiasm. "They said unless it's serious, I can head home today, since I'll have your father at home to take care of me. We're so lucky to have him." She smiled. "Dad's the best doctor in the whole world. He'll make you all better in no time." Fluttershy smiled happily. "Indeed he will." Fluttershy's mother smiled happily, before turning her head and coughing into a hoof, away from her daughter. "You really should be resting," came a deeper voice. The two girls turned to see an older Pegasus with a doctor's coat walk into the room. "Daddy!" Fluttershy smiled happily. "Hello, dear." Her father smiled happily. "Hello, you two." He smiled and walked closer. "How are you feeling today?" "Better. My stay here has helped, but I'm eager to get home and be with my little one." Mother smiled, rubbing Fluttershy's head happily. "You'll be resting there too, you know. You may feel better, but you're not cured yet. But we'll find the cure. Don't you worry." Her father smiled. He looked tired, like he had gotten a good night's sleep in a long while. "I know you will, dear. We'll be a happy family again before too long." Her mother smiled happily before the images faded away. Fluttershy didn't know what to make of the images. After they had gone, the room had returned to the state of decay as the rest of the hospital was in. The furniture and cloth were destroyed and old, with the smell of mildew hitting her nose. "Mother," Fluttershy said quietly. She remembered the memory now. Though it was when she had tried to remember it before, it was hazy, but now it was coming clear as could be. She wondered why that reason her memories would have been hiding from her until her mother showed up like this. She took a close look at the room, but nothing else seemed to pop out to her. She frowned a little, hoping she'd find a little more to remember, but it didn't seem that they'd be offered any. She slowly turned back to the door and walked out in the back of the hallway. She let out a soft sigh as she tried to gather in her thoughts and tried to calm down. She walked further down the hall before her eyes caught the sight of the sign that was lit up above the double doors. The sign read, ER. She hesitated for a moment. She hadn't been in the ER section of the hospital before, and she was worried about what she would find. However, she gulped down her fears and quickly entered the double doors. She looked around, not seeing any creatures, but the scent of blood caught her nose. She looked down and into the ground and saw a trail of blood leading down the ER's hallway, as if something had dragged a pony's body down it. Her gut told her that following the trail was the right way to go, but she dreaded what she would find. She didn't want to see a bleeding corpse. With another gulp, she began to follow the trail of blood. The trail led under a door at the end of the hallway, a door that looked like it was used for surgery. She carefully pushed the door open, walking into the room. It was indeed a room for surgery. Torn apart privacy curtains hung from rusted metal rails. A window of observation was broken on one side of the room. A tray filled with rusted medical items lay near a broken table. Various machines and devices lay in various places around the room. The disinfecting sink was coated with a layer of blood. The blood trail ended in the middle of the room, leading to a large pool of blood that chased slowly underneath the surgical table. On top of the table was a wooden blood-stained box with a padlock on it. The padlock had a dial in it for turning numbers to open. Fluttershy carefully walked up to the box and examined it, before noticing it had a bit of extra blood on the table that had been formed into words. Turn, turn, turn. The letters into NHMBLYRS. The last word was smudged. It had been written in blood. She wasn't surprised it wasn't all more smudged. She carefully placed her hand against the padlock as she looked at the 4 dials on it. Each dial went from 1 to 9, creating a 4-digit number code to unlock the box. The note said that the code was the word hide, and the words here say nothing about turning the letters. Fluttershy thought quietly for a moment, trying to tell her brain what it meant. Suddenly, it came clear to her as she placed her hoof against the dial and began to turn the numbers. 8, 9, 4, 5, she said aloud as she turned the numbers to what they thought must be a happy right combination. The padlock clicked, realising its iron grip on the wooden box. Fluttershy smiled happily at her own ingenious before carefully moving the padlock aside to open the box. Inside, she saw what she expected, the other gem that was Celestia's eye. This one was a dark shade of blue instead of the orange the other eye was. Fluttershy carefully put the jewel inside of her bag, ready to leave the surgical room. She turned and exited the room, only to be met with a loud hissing of the music box once more. Her head instantly looked down the hallway, seeing the same kind of nurse heading towards her, blocking off the path of the hallway. Fluttershy looked around, not sure what to do, not wanting to get attacked but having nowhere to run. She did the only thing she could do and pressed herself up against the wall. With that, she very slowly began to walk towards the nurse, hoping the nurse would ignore her and let her slip by. The nurse's head turned to snap and look at Fluttershy, and she almost got side by it. Fluttershy stopped in her tracks, the nurse stopped as well. The nurse seemed to be staring at Fluttershy through its banded face. Fluttershy couldn't see the eyes, but she knew they were staring deeply at her. Fluttershy stared back in return. She could feel a cold sweat begin to form on her forehead. The two of them were in the standoff, and Fluttershy didn't want to be the first pony to make a move. The tension was thick, only cut off by the hissing of the music box, telling Fluttershy that she was in danger. The nurse finally but slowly turned its head away from Fluttershy before walking past her, heading for the surgical room Fluttershy had just left from. Fluttershy let out a soft sigh from the air she had been holding in from the tension. The nurse turned round instantly as it suddenly let out a wailing, ear-piercing cry. Fluttershy jumped, running out of the ER hallway as fast as she could. She turned down the testing hallway, running straight for the stairs to the second floor, when her music box hissed even louder as she hit a wall of thick air that squeezed down her throat as if trying to suffocate her. She skidded to a stop as her whole body felt terror. The dark creature was standing before her once more. It roared at her, its white mouth opened, the jagged teeth coming down swiftly. Fluttershy's instinct reacted as she raised her hoof to defend herself. The jagged teeth bored down into her leg, and Fluttershy let out a scream in agony as it felt like her flesh was on fire. The dark creature twisted its head before quickly snapping it back, picking up Fluttershy and tossing her by her leg. Fluttershy slammed into a wall, the air escaping her lungs as pain soared through her. She coughed and gagged on the thick air. The dark creature began to walk closer to her, wanting to strike out once more. Fluttershy scrambled to her legs, her injured leg slipping, causing her to crash face first into the floor. Eliciting another yelp as her bruised face was struck, she managed to turn her head to look up at the creature, though blurry, tear-filled eyes. It was drawing too close. She had to escape. She had to get up and run. Instinct struck her again as her wings spread out and flapped them desperately, trying to pick up her body and get away quickly, as she had to get to the mural of Celestia. Jagged teeth bored down into her wing. Fluttershy screamed even louder than she had before, her sensitive wing being punctured in several places. The dark creature twisted its head again, though this time a loud crack was heard as the bone in her wing snapped. Fluttershy's body flared once more as her screams echoed through the hallway. The dark creature let go of the maimed wing, seeming to grin happily at its accomplishment. As tears streamed down her face, her legs finally found traction. She put all of her strength and focus into running, wanting nothing more than to put distance between her and the dark creature. Her vision was blurred, with pain and tears, making it hard to see where she was going. She smacked into the end of the hallway, crying as pain shot through her body from the force of the impact. She shakily looked down into the hallway, seeing the blurry outline of the dark creature heading straight for her, continuing it in slow pace. She reached her good hoof in front of her and found a door before her. With a haste, she opened it, stumbling out. She quickly blinked, whirling her head around. She was on the other side of the lobby, where she could go through the door, make up the stairs, and then she could get to the mural. Her music box had yet to cease its hissing. A figure came into its blurry vision. Fluttershy turned and ran, only looking back to see the blurry outline of a nurse that had been walking towards her. She tripped again at the receptionist's chair that lay scattered behind the desk. She didn't have time to let the pain settle in. She had to get up. She scrambled back to her feet and reached in the other door. The moment she entered the hallway of the patient's room, another ear-piercing wail cried out. Fluttershy turned, just barely in time to see a nurse raised up on her hind legs as the front legs came rushing down straight for her. Fluttershy felt the hoof strike her face as she was sent tumbling back into the wall. She panted as she got back up and tried to look around. She could no longer see out of one eye. Only half the world came to her vision. She made out the image of a nurse walking towards her, barely even giving her time to realise she'd been hit. Fluttershy pushed her against the wall and ran past the nurse wailing at her as she ran by. She could barely see. Her hoof hit the staircase with a thud, sending her face back into the stairs once more. Her head was throbbing so much she wasn't even sure what was happening to her body anymore. She knew she only She could barely see. Her hoof hit the staircase with a thud, sending her face into the stairs once more. Her head was throbbing so much she wasn't even sure what was happening to her body anymore. She only knew she had to get up and keep running. She had to get to the mural. It was her way out. It had to be her way out. She climbed the stairs on the second floor. She wasn't even sure how she did it, but she managed it. She kept running. She wasn't even sure how she was keeping up the pace with her body, but her legs were running. She made it down the turn of the second floor hallway, and the blurry image of the mural was in sight. She ran straight for it, skidding to a stop right before it. The music box let out a loud hiss as the air began to feel thick. Fluttershy reached into her bag and pulled out the blue eye. The air began to feel like it was pressing down on her, going to crush her body. She fumbled with the eye, fumbling it, put it into the right slot. It nearly fell from her hooves. She shifted it hastily into place. She couldn't breathe. The air and the pressure was too strong. She swore she could feel breath on the back of her neck as a blue gem clicked into place. The two gems let out a bright light as a loud cry came from her side. The mirror began to move, disappearing into the wall. In its place was another dark hallway. Fluttershy ran for it. She ran through the hallway and ran away from all the pressure and the thick hair. It was chasing her. The creature was following her down the long hallway. Her chest once more was on fire, but she couldn't stop. An office opened up at the end of the hallway. A simple office, a desk, a filing cabinet, chairs, office space. Fluttershy crashed into the desk, throwing her hooves over as she panted in desperation. Her vision was impaired so much now, she could only make out the outline of furniture in the office. The air grew thick once more, and she turned her head in fear, watching as the dark creature was drawing closer. Its blood-covered white smile, jagged teeth shone underneath its rearing lead eyes. She couldn't see anything but its face. Her breath sounded loud. Her panting was loud as the beating of her heart in her ears. There was no escaping this time. The mural had led her to the dead end, and there was no escape now. Her vision was filled with a dark creature, as it was going to kill her. She would die here, and her friends would never know what happened to her. She muttered an apology under her breath, as her face continued to be drenched with her tears. The creature was upon her, and her breath had stopped. The pressure of the creature's presence was enough to feel like it would stop her heart. It opened her mouth, as it was going to bore her fangs down on her last time. It stopped. The creature had stopped moving. Something had forced the creature not to kill her. Fluttershy meekly stared at the creature, not understanding what was happening. It had the opportunity to kill her. Why wasn't it taking it? Her ears twitched as she heard the reason. Somewhere in the distance was a siren going off. The dark creature before her began to disappear, as the siren had called it forth, that summoned it back. The darkness surrounding the creature's body seemed to burn up. The entire creature would went up in a black fire before her, disappearing before it could finish her. The music box ceased its hissing as the creature vanished, leaving her in the office by herself. A loud click could be heard before the sound of something crashing to the ground. Fluttershy's mind was hazed over. She could barely see. She couldn't understand what was going on. She dragged herself over to where she had heard the sound. Her body moved on its own now, without her guidance. Her body stepped to the platform. Once she had been sure that when she entered the room, she felt her body collapse on top of it, laying herself down as she panted. The platform began to move. She wasn't sure how or why, but she didn't care. It was moving up. It was taking her away from the hospital. The platform was moving into the ceiling. Through a dark path, she couldn't see what was around her, but she knew she wasn't around danger anymore. The pain was becoming real to her now. Her face came to her attention first. She could feel the swelling around her eye. She was probably also bleeding a lot from her face. but it was hard to tell. Her leg was no longer useful. Using it so heavily in her panic state while it was injured, it had gone completely numb to her. She had probably done some irreversible harm to it. It probably would never work the same way again. She could barely make out the blood pouring from it. Her wing, the creature had snapped her wing, broken it. She couldn't help but remark at that. Pegasus wings were strong and sturdy. One could not normally break it with a twist of the head. They weren't like bird wings that were fragile. They were strong enough to lift the entire body of a pony, but hers were now broken. She wasn't sure if they could be fixed or not. The one thing she knew about broken wings was when they could break two ways, a way that they could be used again, or a way that they could never be usable again. There was very little in leeway. Her thoughts were distracted when the platform came to a stop. It had reached its destination. She panted heavily, her body wanted to stay collapsed, absorb the pain that was trying to drive her mad. The only thing that was keeping her sane was the thoughts of what damage had been done to her and what she could do to fix it. But she knew she had to get up. If she didn't get up, she could start fixing her wounds. She tried to stand up. She put her energy to her legs, but they refused to stand her up. She carefully blinked to one usable eye, trying to open it more than it was, but it refused against her actions. She had to flap her good wing, but it was pressed hard against the platform by her body. She panted. She was too tired to panic anymore. She was yelling at herself to get up, but her body was refusing now. Ha ha! Oh man, that was a good one! Pinkie giggled happily. Fluttershy's eyes closed tightly, wanting to escape the pain with sleep, but she forced it open. Ha ha! Man, you pull the best pranks, Pinkie Pie! Rainbow Dash laughed alongside the pink pony. Her good leg lifted weakly off her body as she carefully placed her hoof against the ground. Hee, that was pretty funny, Fluttershy giggled, covering her mouth with her hooves. Her leg started to lift the front of her body up. Her body jerked in refusal, but she held herself up. Her back legs began to weakly move now. I told you you'd enjoy yourself, Rainbow said, grinning, putting her hoof over Fluttershy's shoulder. Her back leg slowly moved, placing her hooves against the ground. She lifted herself up. She was standing again. She could feel herself dripping. She was losing blood. It's only good fun after all, Pinkie laughed, bouncing up to Fluttershy. After all, who doesn't love to share a good laugh? Pinkie Pie grinned brightly. On three legs, she slowly began to walk. She didn't know where she was going yet, but she could feel the need to go forward. You're right. I'm still not sure that I'm good at them, but I love doing them with you two, Fluttershy smiled happily. She loved being around her friends. They gave her such strength. She didn't know what she'd do without her friends. Fluttershy stopped before a mirror. She could see herself now. She could see the bruised half of her face swelling around her eye, the maimed wing, the bleeding leg. She was a mess. With every careful precision, she dropped her